All right, buckle up, because today we're going deep on Elon Musk, SpaceX, and really how they kind of flipped the script on space travel.
Yeah, it's a wild story, right?
It is. It is. And I think a lot of people know SpaceX now for what they've done for, landing rockets and, bringing the cost down.
Reusability,
but they might not know sort of the philosophy behind it and the journey and how they got there.
Right.
And we're going to unpack some articles and some insights that really break down Musk's kind of first principles approach.
Yeah.
Which is like really getting to the root of things and questioning, the kind of dogma of the way things have been done.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And so we'll kind of trace their journey, from the very beginning to where they are now.
It's a cool story. There's a lot of just wild things that happen.
There's some crazy anecdotes in here, so I think it'll be a fun one. So let's jump in. I think it's almost unbelievable, the story about how this all started.
Yeah.
Like the very beginning of SpaceX.
Yeah.
There's this anecdote about a Russian engineer and some footwear.
Yes. This is where it all began.
So what happened there?
So in the early 2000s, this is before SpaceX,
right?
Musk, he was trying to buy rockets from the Russians.
Okay.
He had these Mars ambitions, and he thought, okay, well, I'm going to, go to the source of people who've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. I'll go to Russia and see if I can just buy some ICBMs.
Right.
So he goes to Moscow, meets with these Russian engineers, and, it did not go well.
Okay. I'm picturing more than just, awkward small talk over lukewarm coffee.
Oh, yeah. So one of the Russian engineers, maybe a little offended by Musk's casual wear, Silicon Valley attitude, basically spat at him.
Oh my God.
Spat on his shoes.
No way.
Yeah, that's how the story goes. Yeah.
Talk about, adding fuel to the fire.
Right.
So I'm guessing that those negotiations kind of fell apart at that point.
Yeah, they left. And so, you can imagine, right? Musk is flying back from Moscow and he's fuming. Yeah. He's thinking I just got disrespected by these guys who are, charging me an arm and a leg for their rockets. I'm going to build my own rockets. And that's when the idea for SpaceX was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm going to do this myself.
I'm going to show them.
Yeah, I'm going to show them, and I'm going to do it better.
So they start SpaceX.
Right.
And they're building rockets on a budget.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing that kind of came out of that, right?
Yeah, so this whole thing about, I don't know, why are rockets so expensive?
Right.
He was looking to buy these ICBMs, and they're quoting him, tens of millions of dollars per rocket. And he's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense to me. What is a rocket, really? It's some metal alloys, titanium, some electronics and fuel.
Yeah.
If I price all that stuff out on the open market, it shouldn't cost tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's what, a couple $100,000 maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So that's where the big disconnect was.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of this first principles thinking.
Right.
Where you just question the fundamental assumptions. Instead of just accepting, okay, rockets cost a lot of money, that's the way it is. He's like, no, why do they cost a lot of money?
Yeah.
Let me break it down.
What are the materials?
Yeah. What are the actual raw materials that go into this? And it's really not that much.
Right.
So he saw this massive opportunity to disrupt the entire space industry. He's like, why are we accepting these crazy prices? This is ridiculous. We can do this so much cheaper.
And that's how SpaceX was born, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so they started building rockets cheaper.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it wasn't all,
oh, no.
smooth sailing from there.
No, the early days were rough.
I bet.
Yeah, they're this scrappy startup.
Yeah.
Going up against these giants,
right?
These established aerospace companies, NASA, and everybody's like, who are these guys?
Right.
They don't know anything about rockets.
Yeah, and what are they even trying to do here?
Right, and they had so many challenges, technical challenges, funding challenges, people problems, it was just constant.
But they kept going.
Right.
So what was it?
Yeah.
Besides, we talked about the first principles thinking.
Right.
The cost cutting.
Right.
What was it about their approach that allowed them to push through all those setbacks?
Well, I think one of the biggest things was Musk himself.
Okay.
He just had this unwavering vision.
Right.
And he was so relentless.
Yeah.
He just would not give up.
Okay.
And that kind of permeated the entire company culture. So everybody was like, okay,
we're in this.
We're going for it. We're going to make this happen no matter what.
So they had the vision and the drive.
Yeah. And they weren't afraid to fail.
Right.
Like they knew that failure was part of the process.
Which is so different from the, kind of traditional way of doing things.
Right. Because like with NASA and these other companies, like failure is not an option because it's so expensive.
It's taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Right.
And, they have all these like regulations and oversight.
Right.
But SpaceX was like, okay, we're going to iterate fast.
Right.
We're going to learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep pushing forward.
And they blew up a lot of rockets.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in those early days,
The early landing attempts.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Those were
nerve-wracking.
So stressful to watch. Like, you'd see the rocket coming down.
They'd be, like, almost there, and then boom.
Yeah, or it would tim over.
Yeah.
Right?
It'd just explode on impact.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
But they kept iterating, right?
Yeah. And that's the key difference.
Yeah.
They didn't see those explosions as defeats.
Right.
They saw them as data points.
Right.
Like, okay, what went wrong this time?
Right.
How can we tweak the design?
Yeah.
How can we improve the software?
Yeah.
Let's try again.
So it's test, fail, learn, repeat.
Exactly.
Which is, kind of a classic Silicon Valley approach.
Yes, very much so.
But not so much in the world of, aerospace.
Right. Exactly.
But it worked.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, like the cost of failure for them was much lower than for like a NASA mission.
Right.
So they could afford to take more risks.
Right.
They could afford to experiment.
Right.
And that ultimately allowed them to innovate faster.
And that's how they were able to finally, stick the landing.
Right. And that was...
with Falcon 9. Yeah, that was a huge moment.
It was.
Like seeing that rocket come down and land upright.
On the drone ship.
On the drone ship.
It was like...
it was mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was like something out of science fiction.
Yeah.
Like they'd cracked some, secret code or something.
It's like, how did they do that?
Yeah.
Nobody thought it was possible.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is the future.
This is the future of space travel.
Yeah, and that was a real turning point, I think.
Absolutely.
Not just for SpaceX,
but
for the whole industry.
The full industry.
Because it suddenly made reusability like a real thing.
Right. And that was like the key to bringing the cost down.
Right.
Because if you can use the same rocket over and over again,
yeah,
instead of throwing it away after each launch,
yeah,
that's a game changer.
Right.
It's like, imagine if you had to buy a new airplane.
Right.
Every time you flew somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be
ridiculous.
Prohibitively expensive.
Right. So that's what SpaceX did for rockets.
Wow.
They made them reusable.
Yeah.
And that brought the cost down dramatically.
Yeah. It's an incredible story.
It really is.
And I think it's, super inspiring to see how they were able to overcome all those challenges.
Yeah.
And achieve what everybody thought was impossible.
Yeah.
So where do they go from here?
Well, the story is far from over.
Right.
They've got their sights set on even bigger goals now.
Like what?
Like Mars.
Okay.
Like they want to establish a human presence on Mars.
Which seemed crazy.
Right.
Even like 5 years ago.
Right. But now it's like,
yeah,
okay, maybe they can actually pull this off.
So how are they going to do that?
Well, that's where Starship comes in.
Starship, their next generation spacecraft.
Yeah.
This is the big one.
This is the big one.
Okay.
This is the one that's designed to go way beyond Earth orbit.
Yeah.
We're talking about Mars colonization.
Right.
Lunar bases.
Right.
Even point-to-point travel here on Earth.
Like taking a Starship from like New York to Tokyo.
Exactly.
In like an hour.
Yeah, something like that.
It seems almost too ambitious.
It is ambitious.
Yeah.
But that's what SpaceX is all about.
Right.
And they're applying those same principles,
those
first principles, to Starship.
Right.
To try to make it as efficient and affordable as possible.
So they're not just, trying to build a fancy spaceship.
Yeah.
They're trying to do something that actually works.
That actually works, and that can be used over and over again.
Right.
Because reusability is like the key to everything for them.
And what are they saying the cost per kilogram is going to be with Starship?
Well, Musk has said that he wants to get it down to like $10 a kilogram.
$10 a kilogram.
Yeah.
That's just mind-boggling.
I know, right?
When you think about how much it used to cost.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How is that even possible?
Well, it all comes down to reusability again.
Okay.
Starship is designed for full reusability.
Okay.
Both the spacecraft itself and the booster that launches it.
Right.
So if they can pull that off,
yeah,
the implications are enormous.
Yeah.
It could truly open up space travel in a way we've never seen before.
Like it would be accessible to pretty much anyone.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get the cost down that low,
right,
it's like taking a plane flight.
Yeah.
But to space.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing to think about.
Yeah, and I know they've already had some pretty wild test flights with Starship.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing that video of Starship being caught by Mechazilla.
Oh, yeah.
Their giant robotic arm.
Yeah, that was...
It looked like something straight out of, a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
And, there have been some bumps along the way.
Right.
But each test brings them closer to their goal.
Right.
And, that recent test flight on October 13th.
Yeah.
That was a big step forward. I mean, Starship successfully launched.
Okay.
Did a controlled re-entry.
Okay.
And splashed down in the Indian Ocean.
And what does that mean?
Like controlled re-entry and splashdown?
Yeah.
Okay, so when a spacecraft comes back to Earth from space...
Right.
It has to slow down drastically to avoid burning up in the atmosphere.
Right.
So that's the re-entry part.
Right.
And controlled means they can steer it to a specific landing spot.
Okay.
So in this case, the ocean.
So they're not just like letting it fall out of the sky?
No.
And hoping for the best?
No, it's very precise.
Okay.
They use like aerodynamic maneuvering and the engines to control the descent.
Right.
And that controlled re-entry.
Yeah.
That's a crucial step towards making Starship fully reusable.
Right, because if they can land it on a, landing pad instead of in the ocean, then they don't have to, fish it out and refurbish it.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how they're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, they're not afraid to try new things.
Right.
They're not afraid to experiment.
Right. And that's what's so exciting about them.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a moment.
Okay.
And talk about Starlink.
Ah, Starlink.
Their satellite internet constellation.
Yeah.
So this is something that is,
bringing internet to the world.
Yeah, bringing high-speed internet to even the most remote corners of the globe.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
But how does it fit into the whole SpaceX story?
Okay, so remember how we talked about SpaceX needing to launch frequently and efficiently to achieve those low launch costs?
Right.
Well, they basically created their own demand with Starlink by launching thousands of satellites.
Right.
They created this global internet network that requires a lot of launches.
So they're kind of bootstrapping their way to Mars.
Yeah.
By disrupting the internet industry.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty ingenious.
It is, and it's also a really smart business move.
Right.
Because Starlink is already generating significant revenue.
Right. Which can help fund their other ambitions.
Right.
Like Starship and Mars.
It all ties back to that initial goal of making space travel more affordable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's pretty remarkable how they're kind of turning this vision into a reality.
It is.
Step by step.
Yeah.
But it's not just about rockets and Mars and even the internet.
Right.
It's about a way of thinking.
Exactly.
Like a mindset.
A mindset that can be applied to any problem.
Okay, so first principles thinking.
Yeah.
This idea of breaking things down to their core truths and building up from there.
Right, and questioning assumptions.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing things this way?
Right.
Is there a better way?
But how do we actually apply that?
Right.
In our own lives?
Yeah.
It sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But, it's hard to imagine using it to, like, solve a problem at work.
Right.
Or, make a decision about something personal.
Right.
It's like, how do you actually do that?
Well, it takes practice. But it's really powerful once you start to grasp it.
Okay.
So Musk talks about this idea of reasoning by analogy, which is basically just doing things the way they've always been done or the way everybody else is doing them.
Right.
We accept these assumptions without questioning them.
Right.
And so first principles thinking challenges us to question those assumptions, to dig deeper, to understand the fundamental truths underlying a problem.
Okay.
So instead of just like blindly following the recipe, you ask yourself, why are those ingredients there in the first place?
Right.
Why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way? Yeah. Can we optimize this somehow?
Okay, so give me an example, like a real world example of how I would use this in my life.
Okay. So let's say you're facing a problem at work.
Okay.
And your team is struggling to meet a deadline.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Right. And everybody's stressed out and overwhelmed.
Okay.
So instead of just accepting that deadlines are always tight or there's never enough time, you start by asking, why is this deadline so important?
Okay.
What are the underlying goals that we're trying to achieve?
I see.
What are the core tasks that absolutely must be completed to meet those goals?
Okay. I see what you mean. So instead of just like freaking out about the deadline.
Yeah.
You're kind of taking a step back.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, what are we actually trying to accomplish here?
Exactly.
And then what are the
essential steps to get there?
Right. And I might realize that,
right,
some tasks are actually less essential than others.
Right.
Or that there are ways to streamline the process.
Exactly.
Delegate work more effectively.
Right.
So it's about working smarter.
It's about working smarter.
But it's also about working differently.
Yes.
Right.
It's about having that more critical and inquisitive mindset.
Right. And I guess that can lead to more innovative solutions.
Exactly. Because you're not just stuck in the rut
of
doing things the way they've always been done.
Right. So you can come up with new ideas.
New approaches.
Right. And potentially much better outcomes.
Yeah.
Than if you had just kind of...
just gone with the flow.
Gone with the flow.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
So SpaceX's journey also highlights, I think, the importance of embracing failure.
Right.
Like, they had a lot of explosions.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of setbacks along the way.
They blew up a lot of rockets.
But they never seemed to give up.
Right.
Is that also part of the
huge
first principles mindset? Like, is that part of the approach?
It's essential.
Okay.
In fact, Musk has said that failure is an option at SpaceX.
Okay.
As long as you're learning from it. So they view each setback as an opportunity to gather data to understand what went wrong.
Right.
And to improve the design for the next attempt.
Right.
It's a very iterative process.
So they're not afraid to fail.
No.
As long as they're learning from those failures.
Right.
And improving.
Right.
Okay. So that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
For all of us, I think.
Yes.
That we shouldn't be so afraid of failure.
Yeah.
If SpaceX can embrace, those spectacular rocket explosions.
Right.
As learning opportunities.
Right.
We can certainly handle a few setbacks in our own lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, instead of seeing failure as a personal defeat.
Right.
You can see it as a chance to learn and grow.
Exactly.
Okay.
So ask yourself.
Yeah.
What can I learn from this experience?
Right.
How can I adjust my approach next time?
So you're kind of turning that feeling of I failed into, okay, what did I learn? And how can I do better next time?
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Constantly improving.
Constantly improving.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that initial setback with the Russian engineer ultimately fueled Musk's determination to create SpaceX.
He could have just walked away.
Right.
And said, okay, well, that didn't work out.
I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to PayPal or whatever.
Right. But instead he was like, no.
No, I'm going to show them.
Yeah.
I'm going to prove them wrong.
And he did.
He did.
And he did.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example, I think, of how even the most challenging experiences can be catalysts for growth and innovation.
Absolutely.
It's really all about how we choose to respond to those challenges.
It's our mindset.
Right. How we choose to frame our experiences.
Yeah.
And whether we're willing to embrace the lessons that failure can teach us. Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about first principles thinking.
Yeah.
Embracing failure.
Right.
And this incredible journey of SpaceX.
Right.
But I think it's important to acknowledge the broader implications of what they're doing.
Absolutely.
They're not just launching rockets.
No.
They're fundamentally changing our relationship with space.
They're making it accessible.
Right.
They're making it affordable.
Right.
They're making it relevant. It's not just this,
right.
distant dream anymore.
But that's science fiction.
Right.
It's becoming reality.
Yeah. Yeah, they're making it feel tangible.
Yeah.
Achievable.
Yeah. And that opens up a world of possibilities.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what was once science fiction is becoming our reality.
Right.
And that's a profound shift in perspective.
So SpaceX is kind of leading the charge.
They are.
But they're not alone.
No. There's a whole ecosystem of companies and organizations that are pushing the boundaries.
Of space exploration and development.
Exactly.
And that's exciting because it means that, we're on the cusp of a new era.
A new era of space where it's not just governments and massive corporations that are involved.
Right. It's like
it's becoming more democratized.
Yeah, more accessible.
More accessible.
To more people.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the most exciting possibilities that this new era holds?
Well, for starters, I think we're going to see a dramatic increase in scientific discovery.
Okay.
With more access to space.
Yeah.
We can conduct experiments and gather data that would be impossible to obtain here on Earth.
Right.
Imagine the breakthroughs in astrophysics, materials science, even medicine that could emerge from these endeavors.
Wow, it's fascinating to think about. But beyond just, scientific advancement, what about the potential impact on humanity as a whole?
Right.
I mean, Musk talks about making humanity a multiplanetary species.
Yeah.
Is that really a possibility?
It's a bold vision.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth taking seriously.
Okay.
The challenges are enormous, of course.
Right.
But the potential rewards are equally significant.
Okay.
I mean, imagine a future where humanity has a permanent presence on Mars.
Right.
A backup plan for our species, so to speak.
Okay.
It sounds like science fiction.
It does.
But with companies like SpaceX pushing the boundaries, it's starting to feel like a real possibility.
Yeah. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is.
But before we get too lost in the future, I think it's time to bring this back to the present.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the big picture, but what does this all mean for, our listeners in their everyday lives? Like, what are the key takeaways here? Yeah, that's a great question, because ultimately the story of SpaceX isn't just about rockets and Mars. It's about, the power of human ingenuity and the importance of questioning assumptions and, the possibility of achieving extraordinary things when we're willing to think differently and embrace new approaches.
Absolutely. It's about shifting our perspective, right? Like moving away from that's just how it's done mentality.
Right.
And embracing a more inquisitive, more innovative approach.
So what other industries are ripe for this kind of disruption?
Ooh, tons.
Where else could we be applying these first principles to kind of unlock new possibilities?
I mean, the possibilities are endless, practically. I mean, we can be talking about healthcare, education, energy, transportation, even something as seemingly mundane as how we design our cities.
Right.
Imagine the breakthroughs we could achieve if we dared to question the accepted norms and explore new approaches in those fields.
But it also feels a little daunting.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin? How do we go from listening to a podcast about SpaceX to actually applying these principles in our own lives?
It starts with curiosity.
Okay.
It starts with that willingness to ask why.
Yeah.
And to challenge the assumptions that we've been carrying around. So pick something, anything that you've always accepted as just the way it is.
Okay.
And start digging deeper.
Okay. So if I'm constantly complaining about my commute, instead of just accepting that traffic is terrible and there's nothing I can do about it,
right,
I should start asking, why is my commute so long?
Exactly.
What are the underlying factors?
Yeah, what are the root causes here?
Contributing to this.
Yeah.
Are there alternative transportation options I haven't considered?
Right. Could I work remotely?
Right.
A few days a week? Could I, move closer to my job?
Right.
There's all these different things you could explore.
And who knows? I might discover a solution that not only improves my commute, but also opens up new possibilities for my career or my lifestyle. Yeah.
It's about thinking outside the box.
It all circles back to that idea of optimizing the function, not just the form.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in the way things look.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on what they're actually supposed to do.
That is such a crucial point.
Yeah.
And it's something that SpaceX embodies perfectly.
Yeah.
They didn't set out to build a prettier rocket or a more stylish spacecraft.
Right.
They focused relentlessly on the core function.
Right.
Which is making space travel more affordable.
Right.
And efficient.
And they ended up creating something truly remarkable.
Yes.
That is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Absolutely. And, it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
What other innovations are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to come along and ask the right questions?
Yeah. It's all those assumptions that we just take for granted.
Right.
There might be a better way.
There might be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require, a billion-dollar company.
Right.
Or a team of rocket scientists.
Right.
It starts with each of us.
Yes.
With our own curiosity.
Right.
Our own willingness to challenge the status quo and our own belief that there might be a better way.
So as we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive,
I
think the challenge for our listeners is this.
Okay.
Take the inspiration from SpaceX's story Embrace the principles of first principles thinking.
Yeah.
And start asking those why questions.
Right.
Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo, to experiment, to learn from your failures.
You never know what you might discover.
You never know what incredible things you might discover.
Exactly.
All right, we've got more to explore, more insights to uncover.
We do.
And some thought-provoking questions to consider.